What's up, guys? Marcellus Williams, aka TheSwolefessor, Educational Health and Social Wellbeing, and today I'm going to be giving you what will be, in my opinion, the best and most objective review of the Avancus shoe, aka what has been coined the best powerlifting shoe. Now, I have already recorded some footage of me using these shoes and like some live training footage in my, like my training vlog videos where you guys are going to be able to see my initial raw reaction and when I use the shoe for the squat, the bench, the deadlift. But those videos will probably be coming out like a little bit later just because I've got an order in which I upload my training vlog videos, right? Which is in order of when they actually happen. But the reason why I want to just go ahead and do a more in-depth video focused purely on this is for a couple of reasons. The first one is that I actually think it's a disservice whenever we as coaches, lifters, influencers, whatever position we're in where they send us this type of shoe, right? Where we just go with how we feel after just one try, like just one and done. I feel like in order to really have some proper information on any piece of equipment, we need to actually be able to use it for a period of time and actually, compare it to other things that we've used before or things that we're using currently. So at this point, it's been maybe like 2 or 3 weeks since I've gotten the shoe, and I've been able to have more time using it for, multiple squat sessions, heavier stuff, lighter stuff, same for bench, same for deadlift, and even go back and forth to other shoes that I've used before so I can actually have a proper comparison. So I think in order to give a better objective point of view as far as like, hey, is this a good shoe or not, we need to be able to go off of more than just, okay, here's the shoe, show it to Instagram, go try it, oh, I don't like it or I do like it. The second reason is the fact that what I've seen with a lot of people who are doing the reviews over the shoe is it becomes this thing where it's like, you see people who are either very blatantly biased for the shoe because it works really well for them for specific reasons, or they're very blatantly biased against the shoe because it doesn't work for them for very specific reasons. But instead of kind of taking the time to explain that, they'll instead be like, oh, this shoe is bad and this is why, or oh, this shoe is the best shoe and this is why. Instead of being a little bit more objective, like, well, hey, this shoe works really well for me or doesn't work really well for me, and here's why. So because that's a lot of what I've seen, not every video, there's been some pretty good review videos out there, but that's what I've mostly seen is things are just really biased for or against it, and they don't even really go into a whole lot of details as to why. It's just, oh, this doesn't feel good for me because I like squatting in this, whatever it may be. And the third reason is the fact that, since starting the online coaching since 2017, I've worked with over 200 individuals, and I'm currently working with, 80 clients. That's my roster cap is 80. So not only have I had the time to use these shoes, but I've had other clients take the time to use these shoes as well, whether it was sent to them or they decided to buy it when they dropped. And I've been able to get good feedback and information from them. So I feel like with the pool of individuals that I work with, I can give a little bit better insight into, one, my initial thoughts on the shoe. Do I think the shoe works well for you and why? So what I want to do this video is pretty much just go through every single lift, squat, bench, and deadlift and tell my thoughts on the shoe, who I think the shoe is going to be really, really good for, and then people where I think, the shoe might not be the move for you, and here might be why. So that's pretty much what this video is going to be about. Now, to start off, I want to go ahead and say that while, yes, I think there's going to be individuals where they might find a shoe that they prefer to squat in over this, or prefer to bench in over this, or even prefer to deadlift in over this, I do think that as of right now, this is the best 3-in-1 shoe you're going to find on the market as of right now. That's just the thing, right? Like say, you might find one that you like to use one lift for, but if you're looking for a great all-around 3-in-1 shoe, you're not trying to have a whole bunch of different shoes, or you're not someone where you're so particular where you like, okay, I need like the absolute best shoe for bench or best shoe for then these are going to be great for you because they're a great all-around shoe. And I don't just mean that like, oh, they're good enough for each lift. No, they're very good and high quality for all the lifts, even if you can find one shoe that might edge out a little bit on one lift, and I'll kind of talk about them more and get into it. But just so you guys have an idea of like my background, I have tried several different shoes. I have tried pretty much every type of slipper out there. I've tried Notorious, I've tried the 100s, I've tried the L runs, which I have used historically since 2018 and have stood on as far as one of the best powerlifting shoes, especially for bench and deadlifts. I've squatted in several different heels, whether it's the Romalios or the Addy Powers, the positions. I've tried several different shoes over the years. Some that you guys never even see me try, just because when I tried, I really knew this isn't for me. So I have a pretty good background as far as, and like I said, a pool of clientele in terms of like the information that I'm going to be giving you guys. So let's get into it right now. So starting off, this is the shoe itself, right? And like I said, we're gonna kind of break down every single lift. So we'll start for squats. So here's the shoe itself. You guys can see it. There's the bottom of it as far as the grip, so you guys can see everything. Now for me, when it comes to the squats, I have tried squatting in different shoes. I've squatted in, of course, the L runs. I've tried squatting in the L runs, which these are what I have historically used for bench and for deadlifts. And I still stand by, to me, this is a better shoe for both those lifts, especially bench press compared to and the deadlifts compared to anything else out there. I think it's better than Notorious lifts. I think it's better than the 100 shoes. And the fact is, it's much cheaper. This is like $30, but these are water shoes made to rock climb on wet surf, stuff like that. And I've never had any issues with these. And this was the shoe that I always went to for deadlift and bench. Up until the point of the Hyper V's coming out, but we'll kind of get to those lifts later. But yeah, I've squatted in these. I've squatted in the 100s before. I've squatted in the Notorious lifts before. I don't have any on me right now, but I've squatted in all of those. But the shoe of choice that I like to use for squatting is actually the ones, the Jordan 1s. You guys, anyone who's been following for a while, you guys know this is what I squatted. Now, why? A lot of people have asked me, why do I prefer to squat in these instead of squatting in something like, like the 100 slip or something like that? And what it simply comes down to is, for me, more so than the shoe feeling as flat as possible and feeling as connected to the floor as possible, even though I do want something where I can feel connected to the floor, which I'll get into the Avancus shoe as far as that, stability is a big thing for me. Whenever I've tried squatting, no matter how well my technique and position has gotten, whenever I've tried squatting in any type of slipper or any type of barefoot shoe or anything that's like just super flat, minimalist to the ground, even though, yes, I feel really good as far as connecting to the floor, I can feel my heel, all my toes, my pinky toe, that big toe pressure, there's not enough support for me. It doesn't feel very stable, especially as I get into the hole, and that actually messes with my positioning to where it causes me to actually bias a little bit more flexion, still being able to maintain that tight stack position and be a little bit more extended going into the hole. I don't have that issue with the ones. That's the reason why I squat in these. A lot of people think I squat in them just because they look cool, and that's the reason why a lot of people squat in them, but no, it's literally historically been the best shoe for me to squat in. Because I like feeling like I have like a little bit of weight to my shoe and like feel like I have like the weight and almost the stability of being in the heel, but it's an actual flat shoe. So that's why I've always squatted in these and why, it's worked really well for me historically. Now, the cool thing is when it comes to the Avancus shoe is the fact that this feels just as stable and just as sturdy as what the ones do. But I can feel the floor and feel the ground a lot better in these than what I can in the ones. So for me, the reason why this is a great squat shoe, and mind you, when I squat in these, I don't even take the insole out. Like I leave it in there. But the reason why it's a great squat shoe for me is because it gives me that benefit of feeling like I'm in a slipper as far as like how well connected to the floor I feel, but I have that stability needed and like a little bit more weight to it the way that the ones are, because it's an actual shoe. It's not a slipper, it's an actual shoe. So for me, they were amazing for squats. They don't mess with my position at all. I feel very stable. I've got that support that I need. And for me, I like the fact that it has like a slightly wider toe box. It's also what I like about the ones is like just having a slightly wider toe box compared to something like a really narrow toe box like the Hyper V's, for example, like for bench press. So that's why I like them a lot for the squats. They're that perfect balance. So in my opinion, if you squat in flats, then the Avancus shoe is going to be great for you. The only exception is going to be if you're somebody where, and I won't say you don't care about support, but maybe you don't need a whole lot of support on your shoe. Maybe for you, the most important thing for your squat that feels good for you is that you feel really connected to the floor. If that's the case, then I'm going to say that you're either going to want to take the insole out for this, or you might just need to stick with whatever slipper you're in. Because the fact of the matter is this is not going to feel, at least with the insole in it, it's not going to feel quite as flat or as fully connected to the floor as what you're going to in something like, like the L runs, for example. It's just, you can just look at it and look at the difference and see that that's not going to be the case, right? These are definitely flatter than what these are. But the thing is, when it comes to these shoes, what you guys have to understand is if you want the flattest, closest to the floor possible, what your trade-off is going to be support and stability of the shoe itself. And vice versa. If you want a little bit more support, then it's not going to be quite as flat. Now, it's still flat. It's still a very flat shoe. I'm not saying like this is the same thing as squatting in a heel or like the Sabos or anything like that where it's a little bit more elevated. It's definitely a flat shoe, but it's one of these things where you might need to either take the insole out if you want to feel even closer to the floor, or if the most important thing for my squat, for whatever reason may be, your leverages or just the type of squatter you are, is to feel connected to the floor, then these may not be for you, especially if like feeling like, you need more support and stability isn't a big deal for you. So that is my thoughts on it for the squat. For me, it's great. I think for most people who squat in flats, it's going to be fantastic. Or if you're somebody where you're going from squatting in a heel to squatting in a flat, I think this would be a great thing to kind of test and transition into, because you're not going to suddenly go from being in a heel that has a little bit more weight and support to it to just being like in a slipper. So I think it's great in regards to that. So those are my thoughts as far as the squat. Now, as far as the bench press, like I said, for the longest time, I bench pressed in the L runs. Now, mind you, these at this point are, see if it clears up. These are a little bit more worn out right here, but mind you, I've had these pair of L runs since 2018. It's now 2023. These have lasted me for a very long time. And even with it being, a little bit worn down here, I've still never had any issues slipping in this on any type of surface, like ever. I've been good to go with these. I will always suggest these over any other slipper out there for bench or deadlift. It's closer to the floor, it's truly flat, it's cheaper, and they last longer. That's a big issue that I have with things like the Victoria slippers is that they don't last very long. Like I said, I've had this since 2018, still in overall great condition. For the longest time, this is what I benched in. The only time I switched up was when I finally got a pair of the Hyper Vs. The fact of the matter is you're probably not going to find a shoe that's better to bench in than this, no matter what. If Avancus continues to work on like their shoe design, the formula, maybe they will. But I feel like if they try to make it closer to this for bench press, the trade-off is the shoe will no longer be as good for squat and deadlift. And the whole purpose, in my mind, based upon their marketing for the shoe, is that it's the perfect powerlifting shoe, not the perfect bench press shoe, but the best powerlifting shoe, right? Because the fact of the matter is these aren't made, I mean, look at them. Like, y'all think a powerlifter made this? These aren't made for powerlifting. They're made to just have really good grip on any type of surface, like construction sites, things like that. And we just, people just having to come across them and start using them for the bench press. So this is my go-to shoe for bench pressing. Now, when I compare the two, as far as like, do I think these are better than the Hyper Vs? No, I don't. But do I think for most cases they're just as good in terms of grip? Yes. If you were to compare these on every single type of surface possible, you're probably gonna see the Hyper Vs win out a little bit more on certain surfaces. But if we're talking about, like, for example, carpet for powerlifting, you may not notice a real drastic huge difference in these. I certainly haven't. When I put both these on, as far as the grip and not slipping and like feel like I can really utilize the leg drive, I don't feel a difference in these when I'm on carpet. When I'm on something like a rubber mat, do I feel a slight difference? Do I feel like these edge, the Hyper Vs edge the Avancus a little bit? They edge out a little bit? Yes, they definitely do. But not because these are bad or because I'm slipping in these. I've had no issue. I've not slipped in these at all on any surface. I've had no issue with that on any type of surface, carpet, rubber, or anything like that. The biggest thing though is that if it's this thing where I have to choose, like, okay, if I have one shoe that I can bench it for the rest of my life, it's probably going to be this. But once again, if you're somebody where you're looking for a great all-around 3-in-1 shoe, this obviously wins out. I would never squat in these. I would never pull in these. They're only good for bench press. But this, you can bench, you can squat, and you can pull in them. And I'll also say this. If I'm somebody where I've never used the Hyper Vs before, in my opinion, this would be the best bench shoe in terms of grip. Like, this beats out even the L runs. The shoe that like I said, up until I tried the Hyper Vs, that I promoted for bench press over any other shoe if you bench in flats. These beat out the L runs for sure. So while I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that, oh, they're better than the Hyper Vs, I do think for the sake of powerlifting, they're almost just as good. The issue that I have, well, not that I have, but the issue that I've seen with it and with some of my clients and with some other people that reviewed the shoe is due to the shape of it and kind of how things are with the back, is will you get called for your heel being off the floor when it comes to the judging at meets. Now, the official rule, if I remember this correctly, is that your foot has to be as flat as what the shoe will allow. So if a judge is actually looking at it from that standpoint and following the rule, you really shouldn't have that issue with this shoe depending on how you set up. For me, I'm somebody where I set up with my feet more forward, right? My quads cut the bitch a little bit, but my feet are more forward. And for me, I had absolutely no issue with it looking like my heel came off the floor. I took video recordings from different angles, and due to the way that I set up, I don't have that issue. Now, with that being said, I know even David Woolson himself, who's the main person, promoting the shoe and sponsored by the shoe, he talked about how he wouldn't use them for bench because due to how he sets up, it definitely looks like his heel is more off the floor. And then even my client, Lucky, I know that he's someone where he sets up with his feet more forward, but you could still see the heel look like it was just up a little bit from certain angles compared to the Hyper V. So if that's something that you are concerned about, and the only way you're going to know is if you try to see what it looks like and record from different angles with your setup and try to record it from the angles that the judge will probably be looking at your feet from, both the head judge and the side judges, that's the only concern I would have with this, is that. But like I said, for me personally, I don't have that problem at all. So as far as like just being a great all-around shoe for bench press, I think it's great. The grip is excellent. It once again feels very supportive and very stable. It doesn't feel like my feet are slipping or like, the shoe's giving as I'm trying to, set up for leg drive. But does it beat out over the Hyper V? No, for the fact of the fact that the Hyper V is a little bit grippier on pretty much every surface, and the fact that when it comes to the Hyper V, it's not going to look like your heel is coming up in this unless your heel is actually up by comparison to this. So as far as bench press, those are my thoughts there. Now, let's talk about deadlifts, because that's probably been the thing where I've seen the most controversy or the biggest split on, is this a good deadlift shoe? And this is the example of what I'm talking about when I feel like some people are quick to be like, oh, it's a great shoe and here's why, or oh, it's a bad shoe, here's why. Like I've seen so many people on their stories be like, horrible deadlift shoe, it's not close enough to the floor, get something else. Once again, there's trade-offs with everything. And keep in mind, when it comes to deadlift, there's so much variance. Not just, and I don't just mean like, oh, if you pull conventional sumo, but even for someone who pulls sumo, there's different styles of sumo pullers. Some people have a wider stance, some people have a closer stance, some people have their toes more in, some people have their toes more out. And those different things are gonna play a role in if this shoe works well for you or not. So let me go ahead and start off by saying right now, if you're somebody where you don't care if it feels like your foot is spilling out of a shoe, or you're somebody where for how you pull, you need to basically almost feel like you're barefoot, just be as close to the ground as possible, then these are gonna be a great shoe for you in terms of deadlifting. And that's gonna be for most of you who are sumo pullers. However, if you're somebody where you hate the feeling of feeling like your foot is spilling out, or you feel like your foot is slipping, or you feel like you don't feel very stable, or you just need overall more lateral support, then this is going to be an excellent shoe for you deadlift-wise. For conventional pullers, especially if you take the insole out, you should have no issue with this. You should have really no issue pulling in this at all. It feels very good. It feels supportive. I see some of you out here pulling in the Jordan 1s, which I don't think you should necessarily be doing. I definitely would say you need to pull and something like, the L Run or the one hundo slippers, the Notorious Slips, the Notorious Lifts. I would say that for even conventional pullers, that's going to be a smarter move. But the fact of the matter is like if I compare it to the one hundos, for example, when I have the insole in, right, I can feel a little bit different as far as the Avancus feeling a little bit higher. But once I take the insole out, it feels pretty much about the same in terms of how flat it is. So that's another thing that I'll say, that even as a sumo puller where you feel like, oh, I feel like I'm not as close to the ground as possible, well, take the insole out and see how that feels. Because in my opinion, the reason why this is such a great deadlift shoe is because you take the insole out, you feel close enough to the floor, and it's not like a huge difference in height, but you have that lateral support. And that's what a lot of my clients who've tried it have reported. They love it because it's like, yo, I feel super connected to the floor, but I feel like grip. I don't feel like my feet's slipping. I have a lot of support, so I can set myself up and wedge appropriately without feeling like, my foot is spilling out the shoe, and they love that. And on the flip side, I've had some clients where they just still prefer like, no, I want to stick with the L runs because I like to feel like I'm basically barefoot. And you're not going to necessarily have that full-on barefoot feeling in this for any of the lists, because once again, it's not a slipper, it's a shoe. And by default, something like, a slipper or something like the L runs is more minimalist and going to feel more like you're barefoot. So if that's what you need for your deadlift, then yeah, they're not going to be a great deadlift shoe for you specifically, but that doesn't mean you go on your story and say, oh, these are a horrible deadlift shoe because they're not close enough to the ground. It all depends on what you need. I can understand if it was like so highly elevated up to where you feel like, several inches off the floor, and that'd be bad, but they're not that bad. It's like, it's a slight difference in height, but not so much to where I feel like it's going to cause you issues with setting up with your position if you're willing to have that slight trade-off for support. So if you're somebody where you need more lateral support, then that's what you're going to need. As for me, in my experience, I have no issue with pulling in these. The one thing that I will say is that I did notice a very, very, very slight difference compared to when I pull these in the L runs against a conventional puller when I kept the insole in. But once I take it out and then I pull, I'm in my exact same position that I'm pretty much in for my L run. So for me as a conventional puller, and also somebody where, my leverages are a little bit different, like as far as how long my legs are and how high my hips insert, you guys have seen my conventional pull. Even when I get the slack out, press my knees forward, and I'm wedging, it almost is more like a stiff-legged deadlift. So my position is gonna look a little bit different compared to a lot of you anyway, but that's kind of the whole point I wanna say with this video and the main takeaways. As far as the best 3-in-1 shoe you're gonna find on the market right now, this is it, the Avancus, straight up. I'm not sponsored. Nothing like that. They sent me this shoe because they knew I was going to get my honest, objective feedback. I will have David Wilson's Instagram and his code up on screen, so you guys can, if you want to go use it, you can use his code. But in my opinion, this is going to be the best all-around 3-in-1 shoe that you're going to have right now if you just want one good 3-in-1 shoe. And I kind of addressed what some of the concerns are based upon the lift. But to me, if you have somebody out here who's just saying like, oh, it's the greatest shoe ever for all 3 lifts, there's nothing that beats it, it's probably not true. They're probably not being super objective. But if you have somebody that says, oh, it's not a good shoe for any of the lifts, or it's only good for like just one of the lifts, I would disagree with that. I think this is going to be the best 3-in-1 that you're going to get. But once again, there's going to be certain things that edge it out. For squats, for example, if you squat in a heel, then this is going to be good for you. Or if you're somewhere where you need a super minimalist shoe, then you probably will be better off in like the Barefoots or the VVOs or something like that. For bench press, like I said, depending on how you set up, the only concern I would say would be how high your does it look like your heel's coming off the ground? But if not, based on your setup, then you're good to go. And the only reason that you would have a reason to bench something else is if you have the Hyper Vs or plan to get the Hyper Vs. And then as for the deadlift, once again, it just depends on what type of puller you are. If you like to feel like you're connected to the ground, but your feet aren't going anywhere, and you feel like you have that lateral support, this shoe is excellent. But if you don't really care about the lateral support and you just need to feel like you're as close to barefoot as possible, once again, some type of slipper or water shoe is probably going to be better for you overall. But yeah, those are my thoughts. As far as how I would kind of tier it, for me, absolutely love them for squats, and then absolutely love them for deadlifts. And I love them for bench press. It's just I have the Hyper V's, so objectively, I'm not going to sit here and say that they're better than the Hyper V's because they're not. But I feel like the only way they can make them as good as the Hyper V's would be to make the shoe worse for the other two lifts. So I don't really count that as a point against them as much as it's more just a matter of fact. But yeah, those are my thoughts. That is my full honest review on the video. Hopefully this was helpful to you guys. Hopefully this kind of gives you a little bit of a better breakdown so you can think, okay, based upon what type of lifter I am or how I set up, like on bench, do I set up more feet forward or more feet back? Do I feel like I need more lateral support on the deadlift? Do I feel like, I need more support in my shoe versus it feeling like I'm barefoot when I squat? Hopefully you guys have better insight into that now, and you can watch this video and decide if this shoe is going to be worth the money for you or not. That is another thing. A lot of people have said that it's they think it's a little bit too expensive. I think it's around like $90, something like that. But keep in mind, I think that's when they're comparing it to slippers and stuff like that. But my mindset is, okay, well, if you're going to buy 3 different pairs of shoes for each lift anyway, you could just put all that money into just having one shoe. And then it's also the fact that it's not a slipper, it's an actual shoe. Like you could just go out and about wearing this if you wanted to. I probably wouldn't recommend doing that with the Notorious lifts or something like that. But anyway, yeah, that's pretty much it. That is it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, go leave a comment down below. Let me know what you did. If you not, leave a comment down below. Let me know what can be better. Like the video, share, subscribe. Keep it simple, specific, scientific. I'll catch you guys later.